Welcome back to the Runaround, brought to you by Halliburton Sports here on ESPN 1300 AM. I'm telling you, if you want great customer service for all of your running needs, check them out at HalliburtonSports.com. Once again, that's Halliburton Sports. This is Greg Jubb, and I am here with Brad Jager, and currently joining us in the booth is UMBC distance coach Matt Gitterman. He'll be talking to us about recruiting at the collegiate level and what a coach looks for in potential student athletes. Coach Gitterman, thanks for joining us on the Runaround.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for having me.
So, Coach, what's the first thing you look for when you're recruiting?
That's the easy question. We're just looking for fast kids. I mean, that's what it really comes down to, fast times, and that's usually the starting point, the kind of the sifting we kind of go through to kind of get from one kid to the next kid.
What do you say is considered fast? I mean, is like a 19-minute 5K runner considered fast, or is a 16-minute 5K runner considered fast?
In terms of cross country, you kind of gotta watch out for what's really going on there. If you go to Maryland, you look at their state course, you're lucky if someone runs. It's amazing if someone runs under sub 16. You go to the Ohio State course, you watch their meet, and there's 30 guys under sub 16. So you kind of got to get an idea of what those courses are like, and then look at their track times, and that's kind of like the equalizing factor more than any other sport, because everyone runs on the same track, same type of surface, same distance and everything.
Well, just going back to the cross country with the Hereford course being so difficult, we've heard for a long time that, boy, let's move the course because it's, just looking slow for us. Do other coaches know about that course outside of Maryland?
You'll find it in Maryland. There's a group of coaches, from outside the state, that you can kind of see it because the kids will go to the same schools year after year after year. Chris Fox up at Syracuse is a local guy, and he kind of knows it. And I know a couple other schools down in North Carolina very familiar with it, so they're able to kind of interpret it. But, I knew when I came in my first year and I'm looking at other cross-country state courses, I have no idea what it is. You have no idea of the weather. So when you're looking at that, you kind of have to look, is this fast, is this slow? And then you got to kind of go back and research what they did in track to kind of figure out what's really going on there.
Now, a lot of people have been looking for, when they start thinking about scholarships for track, they look at Ohio State that has 90 football scholarships, or University of Maryland that has 90 football scholarships. Is that the reality in track and field?
It's kind of funny in football that I've always felt that, there's 90 or 85 scholarships, whatever they have, but they can only actually suit 65 people, so only 65 people are ever going to play. So there's guys that have actually gone 4 years on a full ride and actually never play a game. But, in track, we are allotted, I think, 12.5 or 12.6 for every single event. That's including cross-country, sprints, jumps, throws, and very rarely do you get a full ride athlete. At some of these schools, especially the big schools, very rarely do you have that. Your full ride athletes are going to be people who are going to win conference championships or multiple conference championships, and it's probably one kid on a team, possibly two, if that.
Now, most people think that cross-country, indoor, and outdoor track are three separate sports, but that's not the case, is it?
No, in the NCAAs, your cross-country and track and field are the same sport. They do hold 3 separate championships, but in terms of, if you're looking at, Title IX, stuff like that, and scholarships, everything's kind of together as one single sport.
So most people just should not go in expecting a full ride?
No, I think that's pretty... You can find it. If you really wanted to, it's just a matter of what are you looking for in a school, and I think that's usually where the issues come from with kids. What is the value that they're looking for out of college? Is it education? Is it financial reasons? Is it just having a fancy jersey with a fancy name on it? And that kind of guides the kids.
When you go into somebody's home to talk to the kid for the first time and the parents, what are you looking for coming back from that kid?
You meet all types of kids. You'll have kids that you'll ask them an open-ended question, the answer of a yes or no. You'll have kids that'll talk for 20 minutes and you have to kind of interrupt them. What we're basically looking for is we're trying to get an idea of a kid. The whole part of recruiting is to kind of build a relationship with that kid. So when they come in, you're able to kind of work with them right away. There's that trust in that coaching relationship, and you kind of know what to expect out of that kid right away, more than anything else. And that's what you're looking for.
Do you find it with the parents? Do the parents try to talk for the kids the same way they try to make the dioramas for them in elementary school?
Yeah, you get a couple of those parents. You'll have parents that basically, I've had parents drop the kid off at the curb and say, I'll be back in 2 hours. It's his decision. And I've had kids or parents drive the entire conversation from start to finish, working all the questions and all the angles from start to finish.
Do you find kids are selling themselves to be recruited enough?
Some kids are pretty astute, and you'll find that, they really do a good job of selling themselves, and I think this is what some kids kind of lack in. I think a lot of them will think that people are going to be beating down their doors, and it's a matter of how fast you are. If you're really fast, yeah, people are going to be beating down your doors. If you're kind of like the moderate kids, which is make up a large majority of every team, then you're going to have to go out there and sell yourself, especially if you want to kind of get that extra money.
Speaking of selling yourself, sometimes at the Division I level, you have athletes that, let's take someone running the 400, for example. You can pull someone that runs 47, or you can pull someone that runs 50 point whatever. But you see something in them that maybe their coaching's not quite there. Maybe they're a multi-sport athlete. They don't put 100% effort into track. How much research do you do looking into an individual athlete, thinking like this person could really develop into something much bigger?
Well, yeah, you're working kind of two angles. You're obviously, if you can get the kids that are great right away, that's the easy way to coach, and that's what a lot of the big schools do. They can get that blue chip kid right away. It doesn't take a lot to coach that kid. A great example of what you're talking about is we have a girl on our team, Cody Mezebish, who in high school was predominantly a sprinter. She ran the 100, 200. I think she finished second in the state in the 300 meters and in indoors, and second in the state in the 400 meters outdoors. But she ran cross country that fall because I think she got cut from soccer, and she ended up running like 19 minutes. So I'm like, well, there's something there. There's some speed and there's some endurance. And this year in her sophomore year, she actually finished fifth in our conference. She ended up running like a 2:14 half mile, which is kind of what we were expecting out of her.
And talking about blue chip athletes versus those you're going to develop, when you recruit someone, do you ever get worried that, okay, maybe this is someone who's running very well at the high school level, but they might be overtraining, versus someone like, well, yeah, they could develop into something bigger, but at the same time, they may have reached their peak times at this point. Do you look for one versus the other, or is it a gamble sometimes?
Sometimes it's a gamble, and you can usually get to the you can ask questions right away, and you can typically get a pretty good idea of where kids are at training wise. Especially with distance kids, the easiest question to ask is how many miles a week were you running over the summer? And if you start hearing things like, oh, I averaged 80-mile weeks as a high school kid, you're kind of like, oh, okay, which is kind of great. They'll be able to come in and impact right away, but their learning curve might not be as great as kids who are, top 3 in the state. They're like, I only ran 30 miles this summer. My coach doesn't really know what we're doing. Those are the type of kids who are like, we got something here. There's just more bigger learning curve to get from them.
At UMBC, you have a lot of Maryland athletes on the team. Is that a conscious effort to keep kids from Maryland here?
We're trying to. Obviously it's cheaper on their end and our end as well. If we can build the whole team out of in-state athletes, I think that we'd like to. Sometimes we do have to go out of state to kind of to fill our needs and our interests. Even where we were, the team has really grown, in all aspects and all event areas in the 4 years that I've been there, and it's becoming easier and easier, whereas before, maybe 5-10 years ago, we were kind of unknown in the state now, but now we've really kind of built our way up, and people are really, just the response we're getting back from people is getting a lot more popular.
Do you think with UMCP cutting men's track and field and cross country, is that going to change the way you recruit and maybe go after some athletes?
We always go after every athlete that we possibly can. We might get a little bit larger response here and there. To be honest with you, we typically, when we get into our final recruiting, the kids that are top 3 schools, for whatever reason, our schools don't really overlap too much. Just the nature of UMBC being the honors university that it is and the academic requirements we have our athletes, we find that typically the schools we're getting into recruiting battles with are your Ivy League schools and your Patriot League schools like Bucknell and Lehigh and stuff like that.
Now, let's talk about something different here. Coachability. We've been talking about athletes and recruiting athletes for what they are in terms of their times. But do you ever talk to the athletes, potential student athletes, and say, you know what, this person may be a little bit of a head case, or this person may want to have his own training regimen, may not listen to me? How much does coachability and what you can glean from high school recruits in the short time you have with them, how much does that play a role into your decisions?
Try to figure out as much as you can. That's a tough thing to figure out, because kids will put on a good show up front. Some kids are more coachable than they seem. Some kids are less coachable than they seem. You talk to their coaches and, try to kind of dig around and find as much information as you can, and then you try to make your best decision, your best guess from there. Some kids are coming in and they're very confident, very coachable, and some kids are coming in are very much head cases, and what you're trying to do is mold them over a course of 4 years, and take your risk. Right.
The recruiting visit is a big time learning experience for the athlete usually. Is it ever a learning experience for the coaches? In terms of what they learn about the athletes that visit?
Oh, definitely. Typically, we like to do a 2-hour tour around, and kind of see what, to kind of give them all the information they can, all the information about the process, what we're looking for, what our training is. But at that same time, we're trying to figure out, where is this kid coming from? What are their, what's their personality like? Is this someone that would fit in with the current members of the team? You ask the questions, try to figure out as much background as you can about them. You talk to the parents a lot. The parents supportive. and you just try to figure out as much as you can in the very short time that you have.
And let's talk about that. You said you get feedback from the current athletes in terms of what their experience with a recruit. How much does that factor into decision? Talking to your current athletes and what they have to say about someone.
Well, I mean, very much so. You're definitely trying to want to get an idea of, would this kid jive with your team? I think every team and every team aspect, even though that cross country and track aren't, technically team sports in the, traditional sense, but you still have that team atmosphere that you're trying to build. And, you can get bad seeds here and there. And if it doesn't seem like a kid's going to fit in, then you have to kind of go other ways and search for the kids that do come in and kind of amplify the good parts of your group.
When a kid leaves high school, they have that bond with their high school coach that was almost father-son or, father-daughter type of relationship. Do you have problems maybe with weeding kids off of their high school coaches and realize you're not in high school anymore, but it's a new way of thinking now?
The statement, you're not in high school anymore. I mean, that's a big thing, and we don't typically get a lot of issues of like, oh, this is what we did in high school and stuff like that. Kids are usually pretty open to that. We then kind of know we're going on to bigger and better things here, and they're pretty open. Sometimes, you hope the behaviors come around a little bit quicker than other things, the immaturity, little things like, wow, I really need to study for this test kind of thing that, the things that get away with in high school that, at the college level, just won't fly.
Do you find freshmen have a problem with the increased workload, not of school, but of running, the increased mileage and the intensity of some of the interval workouts that they have?
Oh, definitely. I mean, you're looking at kids coming from, if we're looking at distance kids, I have kids coming in who had a max summer volume anywhere from 15 miles a week to 80 miles a week. And you're trying to bring them in and trying to run them in a cohesive system. And there's a lot of hit and miss. I typically tell kids if you're running great before February in this program, then you're overachieving. But we will get you there by the end of the year, and then next year everyone comes back and they're like, this is so much easier. We used to get so exhausted by the end of the warm-up.
Do they have the problem with peaking in high school? You had 3 seasons where you always had to peak. Do you try that same thing in college, or is indoor season more of just a prelude to outdoor?
We try to do different things. We'd have 3 conference championships, so we do have to do 3 peaks. But we put a little bit sometimes more emphasis just on, because we have to, and the training demands of the distance runner, we aim probably a little bit higher for cross country and outdoor just because, physiologically there's no way we could get those kids around peak perfectly again for indoor. So we kind of use that as almost like a speed or, speed building more than anything else, and work on our running economy while still kind of building a base.
A lot of these questions I'm asking is things that when I ran in college, there was a big change for me. I had some difficulty making the change from high school going to the college level. And one of the problems I had was the travel. Is they usually got on the bus, and I went to Lodi High School up in North Jersey for my meet. Now I'm getting on a bus and traveling 8 hours down to North Carolina for a meet, and it's a whole different set of feelings that go through your body about preparing for a meet. Do you find, is this the same thing, or am I just completely weird?
No, I mean, it's a lot different than like getting on a school bus and going 20 minutes to the next school and then running a meet, or going 30 minutes down to the state meet. Now you're looking at, for us, especially in our conference stretches, we're the southernmost member. We have to go 4 hours to find another member of the conference, and our outdoor track meet's up in Maine this year. And not in southern Maine, like Greenland. So we're looking at like a 2-day bus trip, so you got to start prepping those kids pretty early on bus trips and stuff like that, and getting out and doing the things they need to do that they didn't have to do in high school, like getting off the bus and get on the track right away and start jogging around for 10 minutes.
Shaking it out.
Yeah.
All right.
And to answer your question, Brad, I would have said, yes, you are completely weird.
Thank you.
But Matt, thank you for a very politically correct answer. But speaking of travel, you have to travel to go to big meets sometimes, and going to big meets, they're going to run against good athletes. Sometimes you recruit someone at the Division I level, they're used to winning meet after meet after meet. And sometimes they have to get used to, especially as freshmen, the fact that they're running against people that also won all their meets in high school.
Especially in cross country, where you're used to being in the top couple in the race. Now you're in the bottom third of the pack.
How do you deal with athletes, especially freshmen, that are getting used to the fact that they might be getting their butt kicked a little bit in the beginning?
I mean, it's tough for some athletes, and that's kind of an individual by individual basis. We've had kids, or I've known of kids that I've coached that have gone to collegiate level, they were practically unchallenged. And then once they get to the college, it's like, I'm not even top 10 on my team. I'm getting crushed in practice.
And if just for everybody that wants to know, on runningmaryland.com, we put up Matt's article about recruiting and what to expect and what the coaches should expect out of the athlete and what the athlete should be doing for recruitment. So please go to runningmaryland.com, and it's the article's titled Homework for Parents and Athletes.
Check it out. Like you said, runningmaryland.com. Before we wrap up with Coach Gitterman here, Coach, what is the most rewarding experience that you've had as a coach at the D1 level?
I think for me, it's just seeing kids who came on as walk-ons that had almost no shot in the world coming in like 4:30 milers, which is, for a boy, it sounds fast at a high school level, but at the D1 level, it's not very quick. And then ending up the year, by the time they leave, scoring points at the conference meet. I think that usually, gives me the best joy more than anything else.
So developing athletes, come to the D1 level, take guys that really were pretty good, just pretty good, not quite cream of the crop, and taking those guys and making them into real competitors. I agree. I think it's one of the greatest things about track and field in college. You never really know who's going to break out. But coming up, we're going to be talking to Christina Manning from Ohio State, as well as recapping on what happened at a little event called the U.S. Indoor Track and Field Championships. I'm sorry, the World Indoor Track and Field Championships. So stay tuned.